This week on Cocoa Disaster, spooky, also ghosts. Hello, and welcome to the Halloween Spooktacular for Cocoa Disaster. I'm Chorpsaway.
I'm QB.
We have a special guest. It's QB.
Hey.
Our magical girl, scholar, and friend of the show.
I'm here to teach you about magical girls.
That's right. So, for this particular special episode, we have decided to talk about maybe the most frightening genre of anime out there, which, of course, is dark, gritty magical girls. So, the idea behind this show is going to be that QB is going to tell us about sort of the history of darker themes in magical girl shows, pre, during, and post-Madoka, even leading up to this current season, which has a number of shows that would fall into this genre.
Every single show this season is a magical girl. You just haven't seen it yet.
There are a lot, and depending on how far you want to extrapolate, you could probably get magical girls out of a lot of them, like Classicaloid. But we're not here to talk about that. We're here to tell you about them real-ass magical girls.
Well, the first thing I want to do is inform you guys about the older magical girls that were slightly darker leading up to Madoka, because that seems like a kind of thing that people are not very informed about. So I'm gonna start with the first, probably the first boys-oriented magical girl anime, Cutie Honey, from early 70s or something. It was by Go Nagai. The reason it's dark is because in the initial premise of it is that Cutie Honey is a normal girl until she finds out her father has been murdered. She's also a cyborg.
Wait, what?
That she finds those both things out at the same time. Then she goes on a revenge mission to destroy the organization that killed him. So, the circumstances of Cutie Honey's creation and the slot it was in kind of made it... It required it to be a shonen series and a magical girl series at the same time. So it became the first magical series marketed towards boys, which is why they added the nude transformation, which became a...
Is that why it's so sexy?
Yeah, that's why the opening song is so sexy and talks about butts.
Right.
Overall, it's pretty lighthearted, though, even though she's on a mission of revenge to avenge her father's death. Where it really gets into more adult themes is a few years later with the same year, with the Megu-chan. And I have some interesting gifs that Torps is looking at right now.
Yeah, okay, so I want to point out that you made me watch the first episode.
It's the only episode that was ever translated.
And in the first episode, the main character almost dies of hypothermia.
Yeah, after an intense wizard battle.
Yeah, so let's talk about this.
As a whole, it's mostly about the adventures of a witch who comes to live on Earth with an adoptive family, like every single other magical girl around that time except for Cutie Honey. And there's also something about a battle for the Witch Throne, but the first thing you notice when you start the episode is the really crazy Looney Tunes slapstick.
It's very slapstick.
Yeah, the opening shot is Megu-chan falling into a plane, and then her underwear ends up in front of the pilot. And
then she falls on a cop.
Yeah. But she doesn't get hurt.
Yeah, no, but she causes a huge car pileup. And then at some point she, gets hit by a bull and a baseball bat. She is hit a lot for comedic purposes.
It's not quite as fan servicey as Cutie Honey, but it definitely has a lot of, weird voyeuristic fan service. But also, this is one of the first shows that ever did fan service. It's interesting because these initial more adult magical girl anime kind of came hand in hand with fan service.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, Megu-chan, besides that, also deals with domestic violence, suicide, substance abuse, extramarital relationships, and is one of the first shoujo series at all to seriously confront mortality with its main character.
Yeah, this episode also definitely has a part where, the father that she's, joining hits their child. There's some dark shit in there where otherwise it'd be, some slapstick stuff that they do a lot of. Like, violence seems like a weird thing if you're going to try to go both sides of it.
This was an awkward decade. So the main takeaway from this decade is that it wasn't that dark, but when they did try to do more adult topics, it was because they were trying to appeal to boys.
Okay.
Or just a broader audience than just girls.
Right, it was particularly young girls.
In the 80s, nothing really happened. Magical Girls kind of stagnated, because Naruto Studio made like 8 of them.
And they were all, like, super long, right?
They're all like 50 episodes. It pretty much established what Magical Girls would be for the next decade, and that wasn't dark.
Okay.
So in the 90s, a Magical Girl anime came out called Sailor Moon. And most of you know about Sailor Moon. It's it introduced like the whole Sentai team fighting evil. Some people say that it's the first Magical Girl anime where they actually fought evil, but is not true, but she might as well be.
Okay.
It's the only one anyone knows about. Even though the series isn't particularly violent, it actually has a lot of more gory elements, because the creator, Naoko Takeuchi, has said in interviews she loves to draw corpses.
And you've put a picture in here, because that's not a thing that pops up in the anime particularly, because it's much more of a goofier sort of story, focusing a lot more on like a Monster of the Week sort of thing. But I'll put this picture in the video because it's important. It is a very, very detailed picture of several corpses from the manga.
There's this one picture I really wanted to get. I wonder if you have it, you just send it to me. It's like of Sailor Moon like screaming, and her face is a skull.
I don't know.
It's from the manga, though, obviously.
I thought I also heard, maybe from you, that the author said something like, I also really like to kill my characters off.
She said that the reason the Sailor Scouts die so often in Sailor Moon, which is a thing that happens.
Also, one thing that the anime glosses over
is because she wanted to kill them off, but her editors made her bring them back.
And that's kind of amazing.
Because they had the toy line and everything, and so they couldn't exactly kill them off.
Right, you can't kill off characters and then try to introduce more, because that just makes it complicated.
Overall, it's still pretty comedic, though, because it's Sailor Moon. But also, another interesting thing I saw was that Ikuhara, the director who would go on to make Utena and Yuri Bearstorm, he was directly inspired by his own movie, the Sailor Moon S movie that he directed. And that's where he got the idea for Utena.
That's neat. Okay.
After that, Sailor Moon changed things, and people started making slightly different Magical Girl anime than the 80s. And one of these was Nurse Angel Ririka SOS, which is kind of known in some circles as Pre-Madoka.
Okay.
Overall, it's just a lighthearted shoujo magical series about a middle schooler who deals with magical problems and boy problems.
As they do.
But actually, I haven't seen the whole thing. It actually is a little bit above average. But one of my friends really liked it and watched the entire series. And it has some pretty dark twists and turns that involve like brainwashings and betrayals. And actually, one of the characters who's originally evil defects and switch sides.
Okay.
By the end of it. So it's actually a little bit more complex about like morality than usually see from Magical Girls around that time.
Yeah.
Or like from the 80s. That decade. But the reason they call it Pre-Madoka is because in the final episode, Ririka defeats the ultimate evil force, but in its dying breath, it like spreads the thing that creates monsters all over the earth, and destroys like the miracle jewel or whatever the MacGuffin is.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, which leaves Ririka the only one choice in order to save the Earth, which is to kill herself.
Ah!
So in the final episode, she says goodbye to everyone she cares about at her birthday party and saves the world.
Man, that's a hell of a way to go. Happy birthday, your present is death.
And as far as I can tell, it's exactly as dark as it sounds.
Sweet. That, from how you described it ahead of time, it's like, oh, well, how does this have much or anything to do with Madoka? And oh, okay.
Also, in the 90s, we got Revolutionary Girl Utena, which I have not finished. but I have heard a lot about its sexual themes, like the Rose Bride being an explicitly sexual thing, in depending on what adaptation you're looking at. Implied
Hmm.
incest, some pretty obvious sexual assault.
It's very heavy in its themes.
Yeah, and also like it also was really influential, like kind of like how Sailor Moon was influential about how Magical Girl anime would end up later. Utena kind of caused some other series to change, so it's not real. It's not just Madoka. Like Utena led to like Yuri Bear Storm and like Penguin Drum, even though those are the same director.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the same director, so there's a little bit of a...
But also, if you really think about it, Sailor Star Driver is basically Utena.
I think I get Star Driver and Buddy Complex confused when I think about them in my head. Oh, that one's Star Driver. Okay, the one where he turns into the pretty boy Prince Knight kind of guy.
Yeah, the Galactic Pretty Boy.
Right, okay.
That one is like, depending on the way you look at it, it could be considered a magical girl, but it's not exactly there yet.
Okay.
I think that like if in a couple of decades, if more Utena style magical girls become like the normal thing, Star Driver really could be considered one.
Because he does have that transformation, and it is magic.
It is extremely girly. Those are the most girly mecha you've ever seen in your life. So in the 2000s, we started to get really male-oriented magical girl anime. So before we've had them for a while. Like we had Cutie Honey, which was originally a shonen, but in the 2000s we got Nanoha, magical girl lyrical Nanoha. And there's some elements of it that make it really obviously for an older male audience. And it's definitely a seinen, so it's for that audience. But overall, it's still fairly like lighthearted, except for one of the main characters, Fate, and her relationship with her mother, which is absolutely horrible.
Hmm.
Fate is literally tortured by her abusive terrorist mother.
Oh.
She actually is like tied up and whipped, and it's not pretty. And also, Fate is
Uh-huh.
a clone of her comatose daughter, and she considers Fate a mistake and refuses to acknowledge her even after Fate, with everything she's done to her, forgives her. And she jumps into lava with her daughter's corpse rather than accept responsibility for her. And like Fate's lesson from that is just your mom never loved you at all. She gets a happy ending in the end because she finally finds a friend in Nanoha, but it's really dark.
Like, before learning about this, like, I was kind of cognizant of what Nanoho was, sort of. I always thought it was kind of more like a Slayer sort of thing and not what it is.
It's also not as comedic as like other ones. It starts to have. This is where you start to see like more of an actual dark fantasy style of series out of Magical Girls. I'm not sure about the other seasons though. From what I hear, they're different.
Yeah, they always seemed different.
I don't think they get quite as insane. Speaking of insane, I also have Yuri Bearstorm as a dark magical girl anime from around about the 2000s because it includes regular elements of horror on an episodic basis.
Hmm.
Also, it's a new tennis style seinen show with really, really overt lesbian themes. Girls get eaten by bears on screen and they die, and they're gone. So it has like that kind of Danganronpa, like which character is going to die this time.
And it definitely, like, does sort of the less is more sort of thing where you kind of just see, like, the aftermath of just, like a shoe hanging from somewhere or, things like that to make it kind of more suspenseful in its horror than kind of shock.
Well, it does have the shock. It has bear shock.
It does have a bear shot. You're right.
So it also has some very loose war-ish metaphors to represent the conflict between bears and humans, but that's not very dark. It's shown kind of comedically. Which brings us finally to Madoka.
So outside of Yuri Bearstorm, which just doesn't really follow the trend that we're talking about, all of these previously were the pre-Madoka timeline in Magical Girls, and now we've reached this one.
Yeah, so here's the moment that most people would agree changed everything for Magical Girls. I wouldn't agree, but...
And also all anime, and also every media.
It's a deconstruction. It's not. So it started as like a slightly spooky, but mostly kind of normal Magical Girl anime by Shaft, and had like kind of a lot of really weird elements, but it still was like mostly conventional. About a middle schooler who meets a mysterious transfer student, but the tone changes dramatically when a major character gets decapitated in the 3rd episode. Pretty famously.
And that's, I think, when a lot of people really paid attention to it, because that was sort of the one big thing that everyone was talking about when they talked about anime at the time.
Yeah, because normally shows would like lead up to it, but it was just shown as just a completely random act of violence, and of a character at her peak just straight up dying. It showed that like Magical Girls weren't invincible in this world. It also shows that the mascot's plans, like even were, and the nature of Magical Girls were revealed to be much more sinister than you previously thought.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going over like the broad strokes of Madoka that get remembered by people. And at the end, Madoka wishes to save all Magical Girls before they inevitably become witches, which undoes her own existence, and kind of makes her god. It's a little weird. The dark elements of Madoka are like corruption of wishes. So like making a wish and having it turn on you.
Mm-hmm.
Homura's entire like story.
Because I haven't watched it, but I've got a lot of it through, like, other people talking about it. The idea is that she's constantly in a time loop trying to save
She's
Madoka,
in a semi-infinite time loop where she watches her best friend die infinitely.
Okay.
But it's only semi-infinite because it's if she gives up, it ends.
Okay.
Also, Homura has a lot of guns, so that's where Magical Girl guns could probably come from.
Right.
I can't really remember an example beforehand.
And then there's the corruption of a main character as well that ends up leading to her death, right? Sayaka?
Yep.
Who turns into a witch.
I have that written down under psychological breakdowns.
Okay.
So those are like the elements of Madoka that people claim got repeated by a lot of imposters.
And also remember a lot.
Okay, so now this leads us to the Magical Girl series that were dark that came after Madoka and are accused of being inspired by it.
Okay.
So we're gonna start with the first one that was made, which is over 2.5 years after Madoka, so not exactly like riding its coattails. It's been a while. So they really, for like 2.5 years, no one really tried to make another Madoka. They just kept making more Madoka.
Oh yeah, because it had a whole bunch of movies and spin-offs and...
Okay, well this one's called Daybreak Illusion, or its extremely long Japanese title that's not worth remembering. It's the first Madoka-inspired dark fantasy magical girl. It has an enormous cast of characters, because they're based on like the 20 different tarot cards. And they're all fighting a cast of villains that are based on the evil tarot cards. So it's got like 50 characters from the start. So you can tell the cast is maybe a little bit disposable.
The evil tarot cards, like a Dark Death.
I think they call them like
and
the Diablo cards or something.
Okay.
And right off the bat, it's like way darker and edgier than anything you've seen before. There's that violence and betrayal, and there's a major character death in the first episode.
Oh, that's how you know it's really getting in
The heroine's
fast.
even younger. She's 12. But the major criticism of it kind of starts at episode 1, where like the major character death is of someone that you have no connection to at all. It's like her best friend, but we've like just met her, and like they focus way more on like her death than her character. We don't even really meet her. So it kind of keeps going along those lines with like edgy stuff happening, but the Madoka 3 episode 3 death twist is that if a demon of the same turret is destroyed, the magical girl of that turret ceases to exist at the same time.
Okay.
Which is like, the plot device that everyone's gonna die, probably.
Right.
But they kind of walk that back at the end.
Okay.
And she kind of comes back, and it's a little lame. But the reason you haven't heard about it, probably, is because it has
It's
some
bad?
very gross sexual elements involving the 12-year-old that I'm not going to talk about at all.
Oh.
And also it has just some unpleasant stuff, like magical girls being corrupted and transfigured into mindless wolf demons if they get like infected with the opposite tarot card.
So this is definitely, like, going beyond just dark and going extremely into, like, edgy, sort of, like, shock horror kind of things.
It's trying way too hard.
Yeah.
That's like the consensus. And also it has like it just has the kind of gross character design where everyone's too thin.
Yeah.
Like you can tell what audience they're trying to get from the art.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like the worst Madoka ripoff, is how people would call it.
So do we want to talk about that term yet?
We can get to it later.
Okay.
The next Madoka-inspired dark fantasy magical girl is Yuki Yuna is a Hero, which is available on Netflix. So if you want to watch it, that's pretty easy.
And sort of timely to this episode, it just got announced for a second season.
I don't know how they're going to do that.
Well, they say that I think half of it's supposed to be based on the prequel novels,
Yeah, I don't know what those are.
and then apparently the rest of it's the other half's a sequel. So I don't know.
Well, I mean, it didn't do badly. It's probably doing pretty well in America because it's the only one of these available.
It's the most accessible, yeah.
Compared to Daybreak Illusion, it's a lot more subdued and deliberate. It's not being like way try hard.
Mm-hmm.
And it chooses slightly different themes from Madoka. Like it has a theme of sacrifice, oddly, and a lot more focus on like physical suffering and disabilities. It actually has a magical girl who's paraplegic.
Right, but not in her magical girl state? Is that the idea?
No, she actually still is paraplegic.
Okay.
She flies around and like acts like a sniper.
Okay.
It's actually like the stuff involving like her disability is actually handled really well, which is a shame that the rest of her character is kind of like the big titty character.
I mean, little tiny steps where you can take them.
Like you almost did it, Japan. You're so close.
At least they didn't treat it like, this is the disabled character like I think a lot of American media does.
It's so weird that they didn't fetishize that, but they still needed to fetishize her.
The big honker.
And like she's a middle schooler. It's still weird.
Yeah, it's super weird.
But like it could have been worse, I guess.
Certainly could have. So anything more about it?
Oh yeah, this is actually the most interesting Madoka-inspired magical girl anime.
Okay.
Because it has like the monsters of the week are another regular horror element, like Yuri Bearstorm, in that like every week they keep doing it. It requires more sacrifice from them, and as the series goes on, they lose the ability to like taste or hear things or speak.
Okay.
So like, and they learn much later, like this is the big twist, is that they can't die.
Oh. Like via the magical girl stuff, or at all?
Like at all.
Okay.
Also, it has an interesting take on like the whole fairies being sinister thing, where every time that they sacrifice, they get another fairy, and their magical power increases.
Okay.
But so like it means the more fairies you have, it means the more you've given up, and the more disabled you become. But it's interesting that the ultimate theme is more about like acceptance and like penance. So it's not like they're being tricked by like the force that's making them be magical girls and not able to die. It's that they just kind of have to accept it and go through it together.
So it feels less like punishment, at least for the viewer, I'd guess.
It actually is kind of fascinating.
Okay.
But like I mentioned before, it kind of has a little bit of gross elements. These are middle school girls, and it has a beach episode and. But it's a far cry above Daybreak Illusion.
Sure.
And probably better than the next one on the list, Wixoss.
Yeah, so I actually have watched more of Selector Infected Wixoss than you have. But we'll talk about it anyways.
I didn't make it past the first episode.
I don't know, I stopped somewhere halfway through the first season. But, okay, so I guess I'll do about this. So, Wixoss is a card game that, particularly among, young girls, or high school girls, has become very popular. And some of the players get chosen by, special cards, to join a game, basically. And if they win enough in the game, they get their wishes granted. And if they lose 3 times, their wish is corrupted and basically does the worst possible opposite of it that they can. And that's kind of it.
Yeah, so the reason I say it's comparable to Madoka, and like I think that the comparison to Madoka is actually why it qualifies as a magical girl at all. Because it has the theme of wishes turning on you, it has cute mascots hiding more sinister intentions, like the
little card
little
mascots
character that yells battle, battle, battle all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Psychological breakdowns, definitely. And at the end of it, the heroine uses her wish to undo the premise of the show, so...
Does that happen at the end of Season 2?
I think so.
Because Season 1, she's just, like, turns a different girl into an avatar.
Yeah. It basically pulls a Madoka.
Okay.
At the end. And there's also Mahou Shoujo Naria Girls, which stole Madoka's ending, but I'm not going to discuss it.
It's not worth discussing.
No. Okay, so we talked about like all these, pretty much just all the interesting examples of dark magical girl anime.
Mm-hmm.
So what I wanted to ask you is, what, like, based off like all these like concrete examples, does that match with like the dark magical girl that people seem to think exists?
I think depending on who you ask, you're going to get a completely different answer.
That's what I've gotten in my experience. Everyone has a completely different answer, and no one can really agree what they actually mean when they say dark magical girl.
Because I think people focus on different things when they think of what it takes to be, like, inspired or cribbing off of Madoka. Because you're going to pull different themes depending on what you've seen or what you've heard or kind of what you take away from it.
Yeah, but some of the themes of Madoka were actually done earlier, and like the idea of like something cute turning sinister was done in Alien 9. It was done in Narutaru. Like these shows existed before.
I think it's specifically because a lot of people at the time, for sure, like always saw magical girls as something for children, and this is like the corruption of this sort of like childish fantasy.
Yeah, but saying that, like, there's always been, like, these adult magical girl anime. Or a magical anime that tried to appeal to boys. Like, you have Magical Megu-chan, which is doing crazy adult stuff at the same time as ridiculous slapstick.
But Madoka is extremely mainstream, at least for the modern anime audience, as compared to, say, Megu-chan.
Yeah, but compared to Sailor Moon... it's like, any angle you look at it from, there's always a counterexample.
Right, but I think a lot of people only see, in this case, see Madoka for its dark theming in the particular way that it handles it, which is very much, I think, darker than a lot of what you'd see earlier, or at least in a different way, if you ask people about it.
Yeah, that definitely occurs. But I think that when people do stuff like that, when they like look at a mascot or a cute animal character and say, "Oh, I hope this thing doesn't turn like Hubie." But it's like they usually bring up like all the examples of the stuff that ripped off Madoka, but that kind of stuff doesn't really exist.
I think Madoka also, just for being sort of having a more proper twist to it, like because it waits a few episodes to really get into that material, it's one of those things that sticks and is like, oh, well now do we have to worry about these other shows coming out being similar to it in that it's going to have a twist sometime later where everything turns on its head?
Well, the thing about that is that in order to like really have an effective twist, you have to like actually establish the characters and make you care about them first. Like the reason that the episode 3 of Madoka was so effective was because like Mommy was at the top of her game. Like she felt invincible. And that's why it was that time that she had to die in a completely random accident.
And she's treated like a teacher character, like someone who's supposed to be helping these people and supposed to be sort of on a different level.
Yeah, but that's also what Daybreak Illusion did very badly.
Well, Daybreak Illusion, from what you've said, it seems like episode 1 just kind of throws all its cards on the table, basically. Like, to say that, oh, if you kill someone on one side, it kills someone on the other side, like, you've already sort of led up to, oh, we're totally willing to kill people by episode 1, which loses some of its impact because you don't know the characters well enough for that.
Yeah, yeah. I was gonna elaborate about Daybreak Illusion, but there's no reason ever to do that. Actually, I had one last thing to say. I think my definition of Dark Magical Girl is gonna go off of the actual definition of darkness, which is like an absence of light. So, what to me, what a Dark Magical Girl means is something that is less lighthearted.
Okay.
Because Magical Girl is a really like lighthearted genre. It's like usually for kids. It's silly.
Yeah.
So something that like totally goes in the reverse from that and tries not to be that is usually what they mean by like a dark fantasy magical girl.
Which does open up the genre a bit more than when people just think like Madoka ripoff.
Yep. So that brings us to this season, which is like 3 years after Wixoss, which is my last example of a dark magical girl.
And now we've got 3 of them. Well, 2 of them.
I think can I talk about Wixoss first, just because before we get to the big one.
Yeah, sure. We'll talk about the new season of Wixoss, which new writer and is very different theming.
It also has a new, completely pointless subtitle, Lostorage or something.
Yeah, it's Lostorage something Wixoss.
Okay, here's the thing. It's not really a magical girl anime. I was wrong.
Okay.
The twist. Okay, well, I shouldn't have leaded.
Well, the new one isn't.
It's about a game. It's about the Wixoss game, which people play, and then they realize their cards are talking to them, and then they're put into a game where they have very higher stakes than they bargained for. So the stakes in this season are their most precious memory, and but this time they can actually bet that memory in the form of a coin. But if they
basically have like coins that signify each of these particular memories. I think like 10 each. I thought they had a specific number, but continue.
Yeah, they're able to. They have 5 each, but they're able to bet the coin and do like some special thing that like influences the other person psychologically.
Mm-hmm.
Like the main character's coin bet ability is to make the opponent become honest, and they'll answer any question she asks.
Mm-hmm.
But it's just not great overall. And what happens when you lose your coins was very recently explained, and it's kind of lame.
Okay.
So before, like in Wixoss, like your wish would turn on itself, and then bad things would happen.
And some descriptions that was like someone wishes that they can make more friends through this game, and so when they lose, anyone with the potential of becoming their friend like physically hurts them when they come into contact.
And that's a lot more interesting than what we get in this season. If you lose all your coins, you lose your identity because you've lost all your memories, basically, and you become a drone, which means the easiest way to explain it is you lose your soul.
Okay.
But card games about losing your soul with that are overly complicated, I think you know what I'm talking about. That's not Magical Girl. That's Yu-Gi-Oh!
But it's also much better.
Yeah, so...
but I mean, it's still important because it is a sequel to a thing that is at least vaguely Magical Girl and definitely Madoka.
It's not really Madoka though, because it no longer has the wish thing. No one's really broken down psychologically yet. Like, it's a completely different style of like death.
Yeah, I mean, based on the first one, you go in the second one expecting similar, but they've completely turned it on its head. But that might just be because it has a different writer.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot closer to Yu-Gi-Oh! Than Madoka now, so I've lost interest in it.
Damn.
Maybe you should pick it up.
Oh, well, maybe. I guess. I don't know, I just hear it overall is like a lot worse of a show than the original, which
it just
is
looks
bad.
It just looks
the
bad.
first one, it just ended up being like, ugh.
Like you see the crowds and their CG, and it's like, man, you didn't put any effort into this.
Because I don't even think the first one didn't have crowds, so... Yeah, I don't know. That's weird. That's weird. But also that they decided to reboot this anime. Because was Wixoss, like, supremely popular?
Kinda.
Okay.
I mean, it had a tie-in game, and that presumably did really well.
The card game?
Yeah,
I thought that card game came first. I'm not positive.
probably. It's probably a Pokemon situation.
This still is one of those weird things. Okay, so then we have the next show from this season, which I watched specifically for this show, and Magical Girl Raising Project.
Yeah.
Which, from its description, really tries to set it off as some kind of like Magical Girl Battle Royale. Because the idea is that they play this mobile game where they get to be magical girls, and certain lucky people get chosen to be real magical girls, and they can help people in the city and, and do all the great things that they wish they could with their one special power that they get. But then it turns out that there are too many of them, so the mascot character who...
It's Monokuma crossed with Kyuubi.
Yeah, it's basically just Monokuma from Danganronpa, and has a terrible speech impediment that make it all cutesy, decides that, every week now, you guys are gonna do good deeds for candy, which is basically just their currency, and whoever gets the least is going to die each week. And that's how they whittle down the magical girls. But it took like 4 episodes to get there.
The problem with the show is that it's based on a light novel. But most of the problems with the show can be traced back to that.
Because it is super long-winded.
The pacing is abysmal.
So we're 4 episodes in, and in episode 4 is when really anything happens.
I really expected better from this studio.
So we have a case of... because the first 2 episodes are sort of the, lead up to the big twist. And then the entirety of episode 3 is explaining the twist.
It's not even really a twist, though, because, the opening...
I guess it's not.
The opening seconds of the anime are of just dead bodies everywhere.
It's you got a point, because it's also got that sort of, I think, Gakugarashi issue where the advertising completely, spoils the big twist for it. Because it directly says, this becomes a murderous battle for survival.
Yeah, but at least
in the description for Raising Project
got to it quickly, not like this.
Yeah, no, but what I mean is, Gakurashi has the episode 1 twist that just is spoiled by its advertising materials. This one, it takes 3 episodes to get there, and 1 entire episode is spent explaining it.
I wonder how the light novel did it. Did it have... It probably did, honestly.
The entire first book is lead-up, maybe. I don't know how else, because it's been going on for years now, so...
There are 8 volumes.
I've had plenty of time to do whatever.
There are 8 full light novels of this thing.
And how far could it possibly be? I don't know. And then episode 4 is kind of when things start, but it is definitely, it's certainly dark, and got a lot of problems that a lot of the other shows, or at least some of the other shows, post-Madoka we've talked about, have issues with, which is, weird sexualized designs of characters that definitely look 12.
Okay, the thing about that is that they're trying to do designs that aren't exactly magical girl, from the first episode, she says, oh, that's not what I think of is a magical girl, about the witch character.
Yeah, because there's the one that's a dragoon with a sword.
But I think there's an underlying reason for why the designs are like that, and it's because this is a shonen show. This is so obviously, like every one of those other shows, you have all of the same character archetypes.
Mm-hmm.
They're just in a magical girl context now.
And some of these characters are even adults, but whenever they become magical girls, they are in, a 12-year-old body.
And some of them are much younger, unfortunately.
It's just... This is disgusting.
But the thing is, this show is actually very popular, and I think that deserves that. Yeah, it is. It's very popular, and I think that deserves to be examined. Why it's catching on with a lot of people, despite its pacing problems and weak story and everything. And I think that it's the character designs and also the story that are the whole setting that are causing this.
You're right. The prospect of things to come.
I mean, more so put yourself in the shoes of someone who likes Naruto.
Okay.
You like this might be the first magical girl anime you try. This is the first time you've seen stuff like this, and put yourself in the shoes of like a magical girl watcher. Like this, like I've never seen these archetypes before. They're crazy.
Uh-huh.
Like that girl's an alcoholic.
Right? That is the worst case of sort of like, they're supposed to be adults, but they keep drawing them like 12-year-olds. It's a real problem.
Oh, it's great.
Because she also has maybe the grossest design. She is one of them.
Yeah.
With the weird, like, double bikini thing going on, and the gun, and the drinking.
And it also seems to have the Danganronpa appeal of who's going to die this week. Even though it seems like each week is going to take forever.
Yeah, the show... Well, maybe it'll be one per episode now, but that'd be so fast!
No, that's not the pace this show is going at.
Yeah, there's no way this is finishing in 12 episodes.
Okay, I think we kind of talked around it, but I want to reiterate that the reason this show is so stilted is because it's based on a light novel. And that's why every character just keeps on talking forever about the exact same things, and they keep repeating themselves.
Yeah?
I'm really disappointed because Lurch as a studio did Gakugarashi, which I like as an adaptation. So, and they also a little anime called Humanity Has Declined, which was a light novel. So Gakugarashi was a manga, so they could do more with it. But Humanity Has Declined is actually an extremely good adaptation.
Okay.
Of a light novel. So I thought that maybe they wouldn't. I guess the source material is the reason why, because it seems like Lurch did the best they could to make this a successful product, and like the things that they were able to control seem to be what's making it popular. But the source material is just abysmal.
Because like Lurch also handled like some pretty popular things recently.
Yeah, like Rampo Katan, I think. Was that popular?
They got Assassination Classroom. They've got all the Danganronpa animes. They got Monster Musume.
That was popular.
That was very popular. They have a track record, particularly of things that are like popular, and I think a lot of it because of its source material. But whoo, buddy, this one.
I think that right now it's very popular because of the cross-genre appeal, but its source material will probably cause people to stop watching it at some point.
And just read the books instead?
Well, no, the books aren't translated. And they probably never will be.
Well, I meant for the audience, the Japanese audience.
Oh no, Japan's gonna eat this up.
Okay.
They don't know what pacing is.
Yeah, we'll never see them because light novels never get translated.
There is a translation of like the prologue, but it's stalled right now. I looked it up because I wanted to see spoilers.
I guess if it got popular enough based on the anime, it could be, because like Sword Art Online and like Is It Wrong to Try to Pick Up Girls in a Dungeon got translations. They could bring this over.
Overall, though, I don't really have interest in it as a Magical Girl fan because I've seen Shonen a million times. I know what all this stuff is like. So like I see like some of my friends on Twitter who are interested in the show because like they're used to stuff like Precure. There's like, whoa, this is way different. But once that novelty wears off, that's really all it has.
The singular powers seems like it's going to make it really hard to make interesting fight stuff going in later, too.
I've heard some stuff about the powers that they actually use it kind of like JoJo powers, where they extend the meaning to be interesting. But I can't, like, even if they do it, they're going to spend like 5 minutes explaining it. It's going to be, oh god.
Right. It's going to be all the worst parts of what happens in like stand fights in JoJo's.
It's going to be part 3. And I love part 3, but
because like one of the big issues is like the main character's thing is like it can sense danger, and that doesn't help in a fight. That means everyone else gets to join in, and she just gets to watch from the sidelines.
Actually,
like the viewer.
There is a way you can do that. You can use that. Like, I mean, like what if you're the danger, and you can always hear your opponent? They wouldn't be able to get away.
But it still doesn't. It doesn't make for. I guess it doesn't make for a good fights thing like the big sword does,
and also
or the
like
shuriken,
Snow
or the
White
gun.
kind of has the Madoka problem. She doesn't want to do this at all. She doesn't want to kill people.
I think literally the end of episode 4 is like, I don't want to do this anymore.
She just wants to help people and collect candies.
Right. Which, I mean, if she just does that, I mean, she wins, but that's not that does not make an exciting show. Not that this has been an exciting show regardless of that, but
it would. I feel like if it was just taste a little bit better, it might actually be okay. But
oof, it's rough.
There are much better magical girl anime to watch this season.
Yeah, and man, they do. It's so like some of the writing is super trite because like it really lets you know who's gonna die each episode.
I mean, I almost feel like that's like smoke screening it because when I see it, I see like death flags on every character. I don't know who's more obviously going to die.
I guess, but it's also one of those things where it's like, oh, you're going to learn a lot about this character right in time for them to die, so you maybe feel bad.
Oh yeah, it has that problem too.
Because that's what I'm talking about. Is like you get to learn a lot about the dream girl right before she dies, and you get that weird like thing about Ruler right before she dies. That one. A little harder to tell, I think, what's going to happen in that one, but still, it's like an out-of-place thing that leads to, oh, okay, yeah, so we got her backstory just in time for her to die.
I mean, we might as well mention the magical boy character, because I feel like he's entirely constructed out of death flags.
Okay, yes.
Like, every single part of his personality, like, he's too knowledgeable about magical girls, he has a love interest, he's too nice, has an overpowered ability. He has someone he would die for. Like it's so obvious.
Right. At some point, he's gonna have to sacrifice himself for the sake of Snow White.
Like that's what everyone was calling after episode 3.
It's gonna happen. There's no other way it could happen. If it happens otherwise, I will be surprised and amazed.
It's going to happen exactly how a shonen show would do it because that's what this is. It's just a shonen light novel.
It really is just like, yeah. Just also about magical girls. I guess maybe to bring in more of an audience.
It doesn't really have that much magical girl stuff in it, though. Like, the first episode is where it ended. Like, no one's doing any magical girl shit now.
Yeah, well, it's implied.
No, I think only Snow White's doing it.
You want to talk about something good, though?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, well, let's take a break from all the bad things this season and talk about something that definitely has, like, looks into darker themes going on, which is Flip Flappers, which is the other big magical girl thing going on this season.
There are like 6 good big magical girl things going on this season, but Flip Flappers is definitely the best.
So let's talk Flip Flappers. You want to start? You're the magical girl.
Well, yeah, I don't have that much info on it, but I can talk about the director. He is mostly known for working on Ghibli stuff.
Oh, okay.
Which is like why, and also that's the style of storytelling, which is why the first 2 episodes of Flip Flappers are more like exploratory, kind of like how Ghibli films usually are.
There's not a lot of explanation going on in the series.
I feel like it doesn't need that much explanation because the themes of it are so strong, and a lot of the like metaphors are pretty obvious.
Oh, sure. Sure.
Like, come on, the first episode is they go to... we should explain the actual premise first, sorry.
Yeah, okay, yeah. You want to go with that one, or...?
Girl meets girl, they go on magic adventures.
Basically, yeah.
There's a lot of other stuff involved that they may explain later.
And specifically, they go on magical adventures in a different world.
Yeah, a world called Pure Illusion that they go into by portals. It's not clear whether it's like a different place or a parallel universe. It's probably a parallel universe.
Yeah, that's the implication I got from the preview stuff, but the preview stuff says very little about it. So, yeah.
I feel like some of the themes are pretty evident, though.
It's definitely more interested in exploring themes than really, like, explaining its world ahead of time. It kind of thrusts you into it, and you start piecing stuff together. More so.
I really like the amount of like stuff that's just there for you to discover in Flip Flappers, though. Like they don't really need to explain that much. They'll explain it at their own pace. But I really like how in the first 2 episodes Like they had the whole pure illusion thing. In the first episode, they had like this huge like snow world covered like that was almost desolate and cold. But when okay, the main characters are Kokona and Paprika.
Yes. And Papika is the one who is, I guess, the seasoned magical girl.
We don't really know what Paprika's deal is. I don't think she's human.
And Kokona is your typical high school girl who has no
Direction.
has no sense of where she wants. Yeah, no direction in life, no sense of where she wants to go.
So in the first episode, they have this like this cold expanse of snow, but when Paprika starts eating it, of course, as you do, she finds out that it's sweet on the inside, kind of like a certain character.
Oh.
And in the second episode, they go to visit a pure illusion that's very colorful and undefined.
It seems very Alice in Wonderland-esque or adjacent.
Yeah, it definitely has that theme to it, but also you have to remember that they got sucked into a vacuum cleaner.
Right.
So,
sure.
So they're dust bunnies.
Oh!
That's why the place they're in is so dirty, and that's why they went to a large metal container that spun them around.
Oh, wow. I legit did not even think
there's
about
a lot
that.
of stuff like that under the surface, but it's only like just barely under the surface. If you think a little bit about it, you can see all this crazy shit happening.
Mm-hmm.
So like I don't even want explanations for like some of the more boring aspects. But in episode 3, that's where they really got like the more conventional stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But they did it in a really crazy way that is getting very noticed.
You say conventional. A lot of stuff happens in there that's conventional to a lot of different like series and shows.
Yeah, conventional is the only word I can think to describe it.
It's certainly the most, I guess, direct.
Maybe eclectic.
Because they definitely introduce maybe 2 villains.
So basically what they do in the third episode is they do a Mad Max and Gurren Lagann style thing at the same time as they do a Precure pastiche.
They're definitely doing a lot. And it, if nothing else, like, Flip Flappers is a very, like, visually, like, standout show. Like, it's colorful and vibrant without being overbearing, but just all of it is so full of life.
I really love the stuff they do with, like, color matching and, like, gradual color change. Like, you can see, like, if you look for it, you can see, like, colors change really subtly. And also, like, in episode 2, like, the colors were just, like, anytime the shot changed, they were a different color. And also during the whole, like, Precure scene, because that was entirely a Precure scene.
Yeah, there's that, and then there's, like, the canon stuff that's very, like, vibrant and colorful.
Yeah, they know how to do the turquoise-orange movie poster stuff.
Yeah, and, like, comparing it to the other 2 shows from this season, I guess, to kind of bring it back to this discussion, you see sort of this very, like, washed-out sort of thing going on. Especially in, like, Magical Girl Raising Project, where it takes place so much at night. Like, it's a lot of washed-out colors. It's not as visually exciting as something like Flip Flappers, which...
Well, they're also a lot more constrained by the story that they're in, while Flip Flappers is just doing whatever the hell they want.
I guess so. Yeah, Flip Flappers is an original thing, so they can just be like, okay, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, and also, Wixoss just looks like garbage. Overall.
Wixoss, I just hear, yeah, like, production is not up there. But there's hints at all kinds of sort of, like, darker things going on in, Flip Flappers that haven't been really, like, explored yet, and I think that's cool because it gives you something to look forward to as, like, an explanation of kind of what the hell's going on.
One element of Flip Flappers that I think is... I'm not... Some people are criticizing it for this, but I think it's doing it intentionally. Things involving Kokona's memory are not consistent.
Mm-hmm.
Like, at the end of the first episode, like, they get kidnapped by robots, and in the start of the second episode, she just wakes up.
Do they both get kidnapped by robots at the start? I thought it was just Papika.
Something happens, but Kokona doesn't remember anything about it, is the important
Or at
thing.
least they never bring it up again.
Yeah, and also her glasses were broken in the first episode, but she doesn't... They're fixed in the second one. And also, she doesn't need the glasses. She's reading without them. She only wears them in like really weird moments.
And they very clearly, like, have the characters go like, hey, we did that first adventure. So, like, it definitely happened. Like, it's not just, oh, it was a dream.
I noticed in the third episode, like when they do the whole Precure thing, where they just do the whole magical girl transformation and then they pose and they say their lines. She does that completely off the cuff. She doesn't even think it's weird that this is the first time they transformed, and they say the like a 2 minute long speech.
Didn't she sort of transformed episode 1, but not in the same way?
No, this is a completely new transformation, and she acts like she's done it all along. Like, I think there's something up with Kokono's memory that's going to get explored.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and definitely, again, like, there's a lot of stuff that sort of, like, seems like it's going to be darker when they start to explore it, but it still makes itself very vibrant, very fun at the same time. I guess more in line with something like the stuff we talked about pre-Madoka.
Mm-hmm. Something I feel that is a major criticism of this show is that it feels like it doesn't want to be understood, but I feel like it's the opposite. Like they're throwing tons of hints at us. Like they're giving us substance. And just because we don't know what it is now doesn't mean that they're setting up stuff that can be explained later.
Yeah, it's hard to say right now that they just don't want us to understand, because they're setting a lot of stuff up and don't feel the need to, take an entire episode to explain what's going on. Like, we still get the bits and pieces of it to kind of move us forward, but presumably things will be explained before the end.
Hopefully.
But it doesn't feel like it's one of those shows where it's just doing shit to do shit. Like, it feels like they're definitely, like, still trying to set up these things so you keep going, oh, I wonder what's happening with this, and as they go forward, you start to figure out, oh, this is what's happening.
Flip Flappers is definitely my favorite show of the season.
It's good. It's good.
It's just I think it's interesting how like the third episode had less kid friendly elements. Like I know some people who like only watch Precure that got turned off by this episode, but
it was a little weird. I think,
but it also showed that it really respects Precure. It showed that that the kind of really conventional magical girl stuff, like it knows how important it is. And it showed that in the future it's going to keep doing more Precure inspired stuff like that. Just like the real conventional magical girl stuff.
I do think some of the like pseudo kind of sexual stuff that they do is a little weird. But other than that, it feels, I don't know, it feels like it very much like is excited about what it's doing. Like it, it's excited about all the things that it plays with. As a series.
I saw those like more adult elements too, but I thought it was interesting how, like, when they weren't doing anything that conventional before, they decided to go for both ends of the spectrum at the exact same time.
Mm-hmm.
Like it showed that like even though it is a more adult show, it's extremely aware of its roots.
Yeah.
So like when it's saying that like it's confusing and you don't know where it's going, like it knows exactly where it's going. It knows exactly where it came from.
It's not like overtly adult. Like the stuff they do is very kind of subdued for what you'd expect out of something like this, I think. So it's not like inappropriate.
Well, I think it's just for this episode they were trying
it's just
to
kind of
like they were doing like they were doing Mad Max.
It contrasts a lot. Yeah, for sure. Well, they were doing a lot of things, but yes, Mad Max is one of them.
Yeah, they also had like the shonen stuff of like random commentary from Piccolo.
Yeah, they had some real like DBZ ass stuff going on, and then some Gurren Lagann with the guns, and then the like just weird big space monsters. Like it's got all kinds of stuff going on
compared to Raising Project, where there's nothing going on.
And it's weird because like it takes all these things, and just because they're very distinct and different doesn't mean that they like clash against each other. Like it's just kind of everything just moves from one thing to another and just becomes, kind of nuts.
The color matching in Flip Flappers is really like awesome. It's like all the colors and like all the time were so good, and they switched between them so quickly that it's hard to appreciate it, but. And also, like,
and it's used with a lot of contrast, which is good.
And also, one other series that has color matching down to an art form is Pre-Madoka. Mm-hmm. They've done that white and black for like a million seasons.
Hmm.
I just like I feel like people think the show is like inscrutable, but it's showing its inspirations and like its roots so clearly that I wonder what they're really talking
Hmm.
about. Because like the plot details, like I'm not really waiting for them. Like the plot details will come when they come.
And also, it feels like it's still its own distinct thing, even though it's very clearly rooted in sort of these tropes.
It's a very interesting show, and I really want to see the rest of it.
Yeah, it's very cool, and I'm kind of actually surprised how much I've been digging it, because, like, I'm not, like, a person who doesn't just, like, goes to a genre and says, I can't like this, but a lot of magical girl stuff just kind of doesn't resonate with me, but this one, like, there's just a lot going on that's very neat.
Most of the shows I mentioned this episode are very bad.
Hmm. But, they're important in one way or another, or at least interesting.
I think that dark elements in magical girl anime is actually something that you see a lot. Like I didn't mention them because most of the time they're pretty lighthearted shows, but
Uh-huh.
because you have like they spend so much time on the emotional connection, they spend so much time like being a very emotional series that the darker parts resonate a lot more than like a edgy show that doesn't spend as much time like adapting its characters.
Yeah, I guess one of the things that maybe makes things like when I think about the shows I think about when I think Madoka ripoff, it always feels kind of exploitative, I guess, in that it really wants to make you feel without always putting in the effort to do it.
Yeah,
Like something like Magical Girl Raising Project, or
I would say Wicross. I would say the new Wicross season actually because like they have like one episode and they try to like make a character so like her life is so bad. She like all everything is going bad for her, but it's like we only like see like a montage.
yeah, it's definitely easy to look at shows with sort of exploited themes and go, that's because of Madoka, but it's such a weird thing thinking about it now, because I've done it. Everyone's done it. Everyone in anime has done this sort of thing where they go, this is cribbing off Madoka. But it's like, I think people just now cognizant of sort of that particular type of thing, it becomes more scrutinized when people give cursory glances to other shows.
The main thing I want to stress from this episode is that they did not make that many dark magical girls at all. Like what we have from this season is like more than we've ever had.
At the same time, yeah.
Like they didn't make that many of these shows, you guys. There's like one, maybe two. Like there wasn't like a huge like attempt uh, to build off of Madoka's success. That was just the movies. That's all we got.
And you point out there was that Crunchyroll think piece that, like, was talking about how Madoka inspired so much stuff, like, during the exact same time that Daybreak Illusion premiered?
No, it was like 5 months before.
Oh, jeez.
None,
But that
it
same
wasn't
year.
even made yet.
So, yeah, there's this, I guess there is this sort of, like, feeling that maybe just we've become more aware of maybe darker themes, and we blame Madoka for it because that's the big point of reference we have.
Actually, it's because
At least recently.
it's because Madoka's a meme. The idea that Madoka influenced anime that much is that it's a meme. People just like think, oh, this is obviously Madoka's fault.
But again, like the real meme, not like the internet memes.
No, I mean a social trend that doesn't actually exist. It's just like with any concrete examples, it's passed discreetly from person to person by repeated saying. It's a fucking meme.
Right.
My favorite show's a meme. Oh my god.
I think you have to reconsider your life now.
Yes. One.
Well,
Sorry, one last thing I want to mention about like the idea of magical girls like becoming like darker or doing like more adult stuff. I want to mention the example of a very kids show, Ojamajo Doremi. It's this like over 200 episode long show about witches, just in a town, and it like talks about every single character, and like what the standout quality about the show is that like every single character has like grows like over the 4 years that the show runs, and you really get a feeling for like who these people are. Um, but the thing that Doremi does that's most distinctive is that it doesn't shy away from really serious topics. Like one character in particular, Aiko, is she comes from a broken family, and a theme of Doremi is that sometimes there aren't easy solutions to problems, and magic is doesn't really help you solve like these kinds of problems. Like she in the first season, the most progress she makes with her divorced family is that she gets to meet her mom once. And like as like throughout the 4 years that the show goes on, like she never really makes that much progress. She gets like her mom and dad closer together. She manages to avoid things in the way, but there's never an easy solution. And the reasons for the divorce were actually extremely good on both sides. I mean, they weren't like good reasons, but they made sense.
Okay.
Like both sides had like reasons for what they did. And by the end of the show, Aiko like almost manages to get her parents back together. Like her dad is about to propose to her mom, and then her grandfather collapses, and then her parents start arguing. And like as she's watching like the last 4 years of what she's been trying to do just collapse around her. Like I feel like that's really what Dark Magical Girl is like.
Okay. And there's even stuff in like Precure, I believe, that you've talked about that's kind of at least definitely on that darker side, like the one where they kill the concept of moms.
Oh yeah, that was incredibly dark. They killed the concept of burgers.
Oh wait, what? I thought it was moms.
It was both.
Wait, no, that's even worse.
Burgers and moms didn't exist.
That's the worst thing in the world.
There's never been a darker moment in Magic Lore than that.
Aren't there other ones that from that series? Sorry, I mean Glitter Force, not Smile Precure.
Yeah, Glitter Force.
You know, on Wikipedia it actually does do Glitter Force first now, instead of Smile Precure.
Yeah, it's done that ever since Glitter Force existed, because of Wikipedia's rules.
I thought there was some other stuff from Smile that was kind of on that end, like relatives dying and things like that.
Yeah, so Raising Project's garbage, don't watch it.
That's what... Look, we've talked a lot, I think, especially in the last 10 minutes, very good about this topic. But really the mainstay is please do not watch Magical Girl Raising Project.
Or do, whatever.
Look, just say that we warned you ahead of time if you end up not liking it. You can't trace this back to us. Well, I hope you've enjoyed the very spooky episode of the first annual Coco Disaster Halloween Spooktacular.
I was very scared.
Yeah, with me, Chorpsway.
I'm QB, still.
Yeah, and we hope you have a safe Halloween, first of all. Enjoy it, cosplay to your heart's desire, get lots of candy. That's the cool part. And then, join us next time when we go back to our regularly scheduled mid-season show, probably, unless timing works out that the other bonus episode I have planned comes out. Anyways, see you guys next time.
Later.
I need to work on a better send-off.
Yeah, probably. That was a Coco disaster.
Thank you. That was the good one.